All right. All right, I'm going to assume that we are going live. It does take a second with StreamYard to get everything going, so just give me 1 second. I want to make sure that I get Tanja tagged into this post so it can go directly to her timeline. All right, I see we are live, so let me try to get you hooked up here, sister.
Okay.
It is slow moving today. Okay, here we go.
I'm not surprised. It's been like that for a few days.
Right? And I'm actually in pretty good shape here because my kids are not in school this week. So normally, like, our internet's not the greatest because we're all trying to use the internet, right? But they'd have no school. So I have just tagged you, Tanja, in the post of the live episode. So you might want to just hop on over to your timeline real quick to make sure that it shows up. And in the meantime, okay, good. And I tagged Ray too.
Okay.
So I'm going to just welcome everybody and say thank you to all the people that are watching live. If you're catching this on the replay, let us know that you're catching it on the replay by just putting hashtag replay into the comments so we can respond to your comment. My name is Stacy Uhrig, and I am the host of a series that I put together called Strong as a Mother. This is a series that I put together at the beginning of the coronavirus when I was watching so many people in struggle with the pandemic itself. But I knew in my heart of hearts that the pandemic really paled in comparison to a lot of the struggles that other people were having in their personal and daily lives. And so I made it my mission to create a safe space for people to come forward and share stories about things that have happened in their life that are more challenging than the pandemic in an effort to give people perspective. And unfortunately, one of the challenges happened to be experienced by a friend of mine, Tanja Hawkinson, whose son lost his life due to suicide in September. And losing a child by any means is a tragedy. I reached out to Tanja, I gave my condolences to her, and she came back to me a few months later and said that she really felt called to share her story, and she was looking for a platform, and she was aware I had created this one and was wondering if I could help her share her story. And so that's what we've been doing here. This is a four-part series on loving a child with mental illness, loving a child through addiction, and loving a child who ends up passing by way of suicide. What that looks like, what the early warning signs are or had been, what the journey's like, in order to give a roadmap to other people. And so we have covered up to this point early warning signs that maybe Tanja or her husband Ray were not fully privy to as early warning signs early on with his challenges with mental illness and his mental health. The last session we covered his drug addiction and what that looked like. And today we're going to cover something really tough, which is the ultimate outcome, which was Ryan taking his life this past September. I know this is going to be an emotional episode, so I hope that everybody can give both Ryan and Tanja and Ray the grace to be as vulnerable as they're going to be in sharing their story. And I'm just going to pass it off to Tanja and let her share from her perspective what she wants people to know. So Tanja, welcome.
Thank you, Stacy. I really appreciate, again, that you're doing this and working through this with me, because when we share about this stuff, it helps other people with seeing things that they may not have seen before, or maybe even ways to get through this. So I'm just going to jump in because, it's not the easiest thing to discuss, but we um, we always had weekly dinners with the kids, because that was a tradition that my mom and dad always had. And so when the kids moved out, the one promise that I had them make was, you come home once a week for dinner. And they live, 30 minutes from us, so it's not like just driving around the corner. Um, so we were having weekly dinners. So the night before, they came over for the weekly dinner, and we had dinner. Everything was seemingly fine. We were talking about going fishing the next week, the whole family, and, doing a picnic day and catching fish and trying out some new lures and, all of the things. Um, and when they left that night, he gave me a huge hug, which is pretty normal for him. And he said, "I love you so much, Mom." And I said, "I love you so much too, Ryan." And, they went home and everything was fine. Till the next morning, um, I was getting ready, and I, always do my morning mask, and, had just posted a picture, was in a great mood, and about 5 minutes later, everything changed. And before I go any further, I will stop and say this could be a trigger warning, because I am going to talk about how he did it. So if you have triggers for anything like this, just please be aware. Okay. I don't want it to harm anybody by sharing, but I want to share so that others know what happens, at least for me, and maybe some tips on how you can survive it. um, so it was like 9 o'clock. Let me look at my notes, because I did write it all down when I had a moment of journaling. He called, or his girlfriend called at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And she said, "Mama Tanya, we have a huge problem." And my immediate thought was, okay, what are you guys fighting about? Because they loved each other real hard, but they also fought hard sometimes. So I assumed in my brain at that moment that it was just an argument and that they needed some guidance. And there was a long pause, which felt like forever. And it was maybe 5, 10 seconds. And she said, "Ryan shot himself in the head." My heart immediately dropped. Like, it literally felt like the floor fell out from under me. Uh, and me being the person I am, I immediately went into, oh my God, what do I need to do? Who do I need to take care of? Where do we need to go? Where are they taking him? Is he still breathing? And those are all the things I asked her. And she's like, "I don't know where they're taking him yet. The ambulance just got here. I got to go. I'll call you back. He is still breathing." At that point, Ray was walking into the bathroom, bringing me my morning cup of coffee, which I love him for because he does it all the time. And he set it down on the counter, and he's like, "What's happening?" And I told him, and he literally was like, there were no words. There were no words. I said, "Get your shoes on. Let's get in the car. Let's go." And within 1.5 minutes, we were out the door. Literally, let's go. We live kind of in the middle of nowhere. So it is a 30-minute drive to the hospital. And while I don't recommend this to anyone, I was driving about 98, 99 miles an hour to get to the hospital. We got there in 12 minutes. The laser focus, you guys, was insane. And I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but it literally, like, everything else was like blurred out, and all I could see was getting there. So I don't recommend that to people. Definitely not the safest plan. But we got there. And on the way, the neighbors that lived above the kids, he called and said where they were taking him, and that he was, he had been kind enough to take Alicia to the police station to do her official statement and then bring her back to their house. We were on the way when he was taking her. And so he called and said, "This is where they're taking Ryan, yada, yada." So we got to the emergency room, and, the ambulance was still there, and they were cleaning out their ambulance. And of course, I went straight to the ambulance. I'm like, where is my son? Where's Ryan? And they were like, I was like, gunshot wound? And they were like, go inside. They'll get you to him. You guys, the hospital was amazing. They were, of course, quick, here's your temp, but okay, let's grab the nurse. And they pulled us into the emergency room area in a small room across from where he was. And you could hear all of the sounds. They were doing chest compressions, all of the machinery, like you could hear all of that. The nurse that came to talk to us came in and told us that it was not looking good, that they weren't having much of a response, but that they were still working on him. And did we want to see him? And as a mom, I can tell you it is the hardest thing ever. But I was like, yep, get the F out of my way. I want to see him. Literally, let's go. And she's like, I just want to warn you, it's not going to be easy. And God bless these people. They were super nice. When we walked in the emergency room, you walk in and see them laying there. There's not much life. Tubes hanging everywhere, blood all over the place, you guys. It was horrific, okay? The nurse that came and got us immediately put her hands on both of our backs and just stayed there with us. And she was like, you can talk to him, you can hold his hand, we're going to keep working on him. And after a few more rounds of chest compressions, the doctor was like, we got to call it. It's been like 20 minutes, and we're not getting any sign. And, I was holding his hand. And you can feel a change. And I don't know if he was already gone, but I'd like to feel and believe that he was not, that he went when we were there. And it's very difficult to recall it, but in sharing it and talking about it, it does help release the pain. It does help release the emotions. And it helps me to tell others about the whole process, because in this process, I've had many people reach out to say, I've been there and I know how you feel. And others reaching out to say, thank you for sharing, because it really helped me talk about my kid. It helped me to open up. And that's really what I want for people through this, is for you to be able to express it, to get that grief and anger and pain out, because when you hold it in, it doesn't serve you well. So once he passed, we talked to the doctors, we talked to the policemen, all of that. And they were like, take as much time as you need. You can stay here as long as you need, and we stayed for a while and we prayed with the chaplain that came in. and took his few little possessions that he had on him. And we went back to the kids' house to get the grandbabies and our now daughter. And we got back to the house, and there was crime scene tape up, of course, so you couldn't get in the apartment. And the police officers there were nice enough to go in and get some of the baby's things, which was very helpful. And when we got there, I believe people are put in your path for reasons. The kids' neighbors upstairs, there are no words for these people. He came downstairs when Ryan shot himself and started CPR. She helped Alicia and took the babies, and helped through that. They also took Alicia to do the police statement. They sent over clothes for the kids because they knew they couldn't get in the house, so they went shopping and bought them clothes. And come to find out afterwards, he works in his shop and does glass blowing. So once everything was settled, he made necklaces for all of my kids, his sisters, Ryan's sisters, with his ashes in them, which is amazing. So there's just, I believe that God puts people in your path for a reason. And even if it's just for a moment, it touches your life. And that's basically the day. The rest of the day was, my husband drove Alicia and the babies back to our house, because there was no way she would be driving, not in my mind. Like, you can't. Too much emotion. So my drive home was very quiet. It just felt pretty numb, and that's part of grief and shock. You kind of tune out, right? And so the drive home was 30 minutes at normal speed. And it was very quiet. So I had a lot of time to myself to bawl, to think about it, to let it out. And then you get home and you have to start making phone calls. And I gotta tell you, that part right there is very difficult because everybody has a million questions when you call. So you're already reliving the story over and over. And for most people, not that I'm anything special, I am just built different than a lot of people. I'm very strong and I can get through things. I might lose my later and bawl. But in the moment, things have to happen and you have to just get through them. And the best advice for that I can give you is if you have somebody that is with you or close to you that can be a phone tree for something like this, utilize that. Because I did not, and it's one thing I wished I would have done, because y'all, we have a huge family. Huge. I have 6 sisters. Ray has 8 siblings, not to mention, cousins, nieces, nephews, all of that. Use the phone tree. You guys, it is super helpful to take some of that burden off yourself, because I know when you're going through pain like this, you tend to close down and you just want to take care of it yourself. But the best advice I can give that I learned from this is don't do that. Utilize the people that love you and want to help. Definitely do that. Yeah. And the rest of the day was kind of blurry. lots of people coming, lots of people, calling. And I did not accept a lot of calls, you guys, uh, even from some family. I just couldn't do it. Like, and you know what? It's okay. You can reach out later because you need that time for your immediate grief. You really do. So that was the day. It was crazy.
Thank you so much for sharing. And for those people who are watching, thank you for giving Tanja the space to share safely. Such a traumatic experience. One thing, there are a couple of things that I want to cover that you and I discussed prior, but one that's in my head right now that we didn't discuss is when you have a child with a drug addiction, which you so courageously talked about in our last episode. I know that you've shared with me that Ryan overdosed many times, a handful of times.
Yep.
And when you go through an experience like that, you mourn your child each time.
Yep.
There's a level of grief because you're so uber prepared even after the first time.
Yeah.
How did the 3 overdose experiences, I don't want to use the word prepare, but I don't know what other word to use for this experience? Because I think unless you've been through something like this with someone in your life, people don't understand that when people are attempting to take their life, whether it be by way of overdose or what have you, the level of grief that that person is feeling and the people in their family are feeling are like that of a death, multiple times over, all the time.
Yeah.
So how did that experience prepare you for this, Tanja?
Well, I mean, honestly, anyone that has dealt with someone with addiction, that even if they haven't overdosed, the process that you go through with that is the person that you love so much is really dead. Not physically, but emotionally dead. And to you, they are already gone when you get to that point where you have to love and let go. So you basically mourn the death of your loved one while they're still living. And we went through that several times with him. And in my opinion, it really helped me be prepared for this event. Because typically when someone commits suicide, there's a lot of anger in people that love them, because they're pissed that they did it. Why did you do it? Why did you leave us? I did not have that, and I still don't. I know how much pain that he's been through throughout his short life, and we've had many discussions about how he just never felt like he belonged here. So when we lost him, for me, it was like a sense of relief, which sounds really backwards. But relief that he's no longer in pain, relief that we are not going to have to live that again and again if he continued down that path. Relief for his children and his girlfriend that they won't have to see a dad that struggles or a husband that struggles with mental illness. And I know for some people it sounds terrible, but for a lot of people that I've discovered going through this same thing, that relief is a real valid feeling.
And I brought it up because I think it is so important to talk about, because I think that the level of shame that
Hmm.
comes from a parent losing a child to suicide, the shame that the parent takes on,
Yeah,
forces them into a place of secrecy.
it does. Yep.
And I fully believe with my whole heart that connection is the entire purpose of our being. And it's why humans are given the emotion that they are, because connection is the purpose of life. And when you walk in shame, shame can only live in secrecy.
Yep.
And when you share the story, there cannot be shame.
Right.
And the shame will kill someone. And I don't say that lightly. It emotionally, it will destroy someone.
Yep.
Um,
And physically, because it takes its toll on your body.
mhm.
Yep. And
And so I
that's,
think part of the thing that I find to be so strikingly courageous on your part is that you're willing to break a ceiling that people are not willing to, a lot of people are not willing to break.
yeah.
You're willing to talk about a subject that unfortunately is considered taboo.
Yep.
Mental health illness, drug addiction, drug overdose, the taking of a life by suicide. These are not things that people want to know about. They're not things
Mhm.
that people want to talk about. It
Yep.
makes people uncomfortable. But for so many millions of people, it is their reality. And if
It
we
is.
can talk about it and we get rid of the stigma and we can get rid of the shame,
Yep.
more people will find a connectiveness in the experience.
Yeah.
And where I go with that is, and this is what you and I discussed prior, because I wanted to make sure you were going to be okay if I brought up this concept of purpose and pain.
Yep.
Whenever I preach and I talk about that there is purpose and pain, and that life is a series of experiences divinely designed for you, and I believe it in every fiber of my being, and I feel like it's almost a calling given to me to exploit for other people to hear, I always get stopped in my own tracks, because I always think to myself, but what about the parent that's lost a child? Who's going to come to my front door and bitch slap me for saying this? Because I'm so aware, and I never want to come across as insensitive, because it's not an experience I have had myself.
Yeah.
It's just something I feel in my fiber. And so when I brought that up to you and I said, how do you feel about this concept? You shared with me that you do feel that there's so much purpose in this experience.
Yeah.
One of which is you being able to come forward and just be able to support other parents who maybe are still in secret or still in shame about their own personal experience. But
Yeah.
you're also seeing other points of purpose from this pain in your own life.
Yeah.
How are you finding the gifts in this challenge and the purpose in this pain, Tanya?
Like I said, I mean, I was raised by pretty strong parents. Um, that my mom, I'm a lot like her. Uh, very strong, very solid in her heart. Um, so I deal with grief and pain. I've always known that my purpose in life is to help others. Like I've known that for a long time. Um, I just didn't know how or what it would be and what it would look like. And this event is really bringing that to light. That my story may help someone else get through, that my story might help a parent or parents recognize something in their kids to help them before it's too late. That my grandbabies will know their dad, that our now daughter um, will know that she is loved, that she is supported. There's purpose in everything if you just look. And I know in these situations it's extremely difficult to see it. And sometimes it takes people longer than others. So don't put a timeline on it to yourself, but always look for the good. And one thing that really has helped me with this is to journal. Write it down. Whatever it is coming out of your brain, you wake up from a dream at night, write it down. It does help to look back on it and see where your thought process was at the moment, because even in that, you can see good things. So it is definitely one thing I would suggest for people is to journal. And I know it's difficult to write about the loved ones in these situations. So even if you can start by just writing their name on one piece of paper, and maybe the next day writing down the date of their death. Simple steps to get started, because then it starts to pour out, which is crazy, let me tell you. So there is a lot of purpose behind it. Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot to process. It's a lot
It
to
is.
process that you have gone through it. When you talk about
Yeah.
human connection and if you're an empathic person, it's almost impossible not to feel the other person's pain. And I'm very empathic. I'm really feeling your pain right now. I'm so grateful for your courage. I am so confident that even if one person gets a hold of this series, that it could change a life.
That's what I hope for you.
And I know it is. And,
Yeah.
when you and I initially spoke a month ago, we quickly identified that this would be multiple stages. It couldn't possibly be one interview. And I think we've done it well up to this point. We have one piece of the series left, which is next week, and that's to really talk about what next. You have many children. Ryan was one of 6?
5.
5. They all have their own ways of managing stress and grief, which there should never be any judgment to how anybody
Ever.
grieves. Everybody's process is
Ever.
different. Don't let the
Yep.
ego get in the way.
Yep.
You've got a husband who's grieving. You have a new daughter who's grieving. You've got children that you have the opportunity to share Ryan with in the best possible way.
Yep.
And so next week we're going to round up the series to talk about how do you move forward?
Yeah.
How do you move forward without guilt of feeling joy?
Yeah.
How do you move forward? And you and I just discussed this. You just had your first Christmas.
Yeah.
Without Ryan. So we can talk about that next week and what that looked like. And I know that you actually had shared with me on our last discussion before this, some of the things that you were actually excited about making new traditions around. So we could talk about that a little bit next week. What I would love, we're going to do this last session next Wednesday, is that anybody who watches this episode between now and next Wednesday, ask your questions.
Yep.
Let us know what you want to know. What do you want to know about mental health? What do you want to know about drug addiction? What do you want to know about the early warning signs? What do you want to know about being able to move forward? Because that will really help us conclude this in a way that will best serve the people that are watching it, because I know that that's your purpose.
Yes.
With this particular topic. So, Tanja,
And Stacey, one thing I'll say to that is don't be afraid to ask. It's okay to talk about him, and it's okay to talk about the whole situation. With anyone that's going through this, it's okay to talk about them.
I love it. I'm overwhelmed by how profound it is the whole circumstance and your ability to share. And I know when you share that you're strong, it doesn't mean that you don't feel pain.
No.
And it doesn't mean that you
Definitely.
don't feel sadness. I know you've shared with me you have this ability to compartmentalize, but it
I
doesn't mean
do.
that you're ignoring.
Nope.
It's just,
Definitely
and you
not.
said it, and it was kind of, I saw it because my kids actually use this term a lot. You're like, I'm just built different. But what a blessing that you are built in a way that you can see this very traumatic experience through such a lens that gives
Yeah.
you the way to make the pain purposeful.
Yep.
Because I think too often parents who are dealing with this, they just sit in the pain. And it makes total sense.
Yeah.
It's what makes us human, but
Yep.
you have a superpower. Like your ability to, and I would say in a quick manner, because September was not that long ago,
It was
to
not.
come to me and say, I'm ready. I was like, whoa, you sure? You sure you want to do that? You're like, yep,
Yeah.
I'm ready. I was like, let's do it.
Yep.
You know, and you know, I was shitting a brick. Like I was so nervous for our first one because I felt a level of responsibility to honor Ryan in the best way, because Ryan's life lived is purpose.
It is.
And unfortunately for your family, it was too short because
Very
you
short.
loved him so much.
Yeah.
But his life is going to be filled with legacy
Yep.
in a way that's so powerful. And I know that for you, that is what you want to bring to light, of how
Yep.
can we take this tragic moment and turn it into something powerful for something and for someone else.
Exactly.
So unless you have something that you want to conclude with, I'm going to end it here. And like I said, for those people that are catching it on the replay, please ask your questions right here in the comments. I will put the links to the other 2 past episodes into the comments so you can catch up if this is your first time seeing it. And just know that we will come back live, same time, same location, next Wednesday, noon, to round this up and to be able to answer your questions and to be able to share how you move forward
Yeah.
with joy. So
Yes.
I want to thank everybody for watching. Do you have anything you want to share at the end, Tanja?
Just thank you again for helping me get through this. Yeah.
Honored. So thank you guys so much, and we will see you next Wednesday.
Thanks, Stacy.